Welcome back to Easy Story Studio, where we bring your imagination to life. Today, we journey to the solitary peaks of the Cerro Quechan Observatory in a tale titled The Astronomer's Anomaly. Join Dr. Elias Thorne as a routine night of stargazing uncovers a secret that will shatter everything humanity thought it knew about the cosmos. Dim the lights, get comfortable, and let's gaze into the abyss. The observatory sat perched atop the jagged spine of the Cerro Quechan Ridge, a solitary sentinel bathed in the ethereal glow of the Milky Way. For Dr. Elias Thorne, this isolated facility was not merely a workplace, but a sanctuary where the profound silence amplified the whispers of the cosmos. Down in the valley, humanity slumbered in its chaotic ignorance, entirely oblivious to the celestial ballet unfolding light years away. Elias had dedicated the entirety of his adult life to the meticulous scrutiny of exoplanetary transits, searching for infinitesimal dips in stellar luminosity. He was a man of uncompromising routine, heavily reliant on the cold, hard certainty that mathematics and physics provided. However, the data cascading across his multi-monitor setup tonight threatened to completely upend his deeply entrenched scientific paradigms. The anomaly manifested as a jagged, asymmetrical trough in the light curve of a relatively obscure main sequence star located in the Cygnus constellation. Typically, when a planet transits its host star, the resulting drop in light produces a smooth, predictable, and symmetrical U-shape. This particular light curve, however, looked incredibly erratic, resembling a jagged heartbeat rather than a smooth planetary orbit. Initially, Elias attributed the bizarre reading to a mundane instrumental glitch, perhaps a speck of dust on a sensor or a fleeting atmospheric disturbance. He initiated a comprehensive diagnostic sweep of the telescope's optical arrays, anticipating the reassuring confirmation of a mechanical error. Yet the diagnostic software returned a pristine bill of health, leaving him staring at the inexplicable data with mounting trepidation.
He reran the observational sequence, directing the massive mirrored eye of the telescope to stare unflinchingly at the exact same coordinates. The subsequent dataset, downloaded 30 agonizing minutes later, perfectly mirrored the initial chaotic anomaly. It was not an ephemeral glitch, but a persistent, tangible phenomenon occurring thousands of light years from Earth. Elias leaned back in his worn leather chair, rubbing his weary eyes as a profound sense of isolation washed over him. He was completely alone with a discovery that defied every established model of planetary formation and orbital mechanics he had ever studied. The object passing in front of that distant star was not a sphere, nor was it a ringed gas giant or a dusty comet tail. Driven by an insatiable curiosity, he began to manually filter the raw telemetry, applying complex Fourier transforms to isolate any underlying frequencies. As the algorithms chewed through the massive dataset, a startlingly ordered pattern began to emerge from the apparent chaos. The dips in luminosity were not random. They were spaced according to a highly specific, mathematically rigorous sequence. His heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird as he recognized the intervals forming a sequence of prime numbers: 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The pattern repeated with flawless, undeniable precision across the star's light curve. Nature, in all its chaotic majesty, simply did not produce such stark, deliberate, and undeniably artificial mathematical sequences.
The implication was as terrifying as it was exhilarating, threatening to shatter the foundational pillars of human philosophy and science. This was an undeniable signature of intelligent engineering, a cosmic lighthouse deliberately broadcasting its existence across the interstellar void. Elias felt a cold sweat break out across his forehead, realizing the staggering magnitude of the burden now resting squarely on his shoulders. He knew that presenting such extraordinary claims without utterly irrefutable evidence would be professional suicide in the fiercely competitive academic community. He needed corroboration, a skeptical eye to ruthlessly tear apart his methodology and hunt for the fatal flaw he might have overlooked. Consequently, he reached for the encrypted satellite phone, dialing the number of Dr. Elena Rostova, the most formidable astrophysicist he knew. Elena answered with a groggy, irritated sigh, clearly displeased at being jolted awake at 3 in the morning by a former rival. Elias bypassed the customary pleasantries entirely, launching directly into a breathless explanation of the Cygnus anomaly and the prime number sequence. The line remained dead silent for a long moment before Elena curtly demanded that he transmit the raw, unfiltered data to her secure server immediately. The ensuing hours were agonizingly tense, a high-stakes waiting game played out in the profound silence of the mountaintop observatory. Elias paced the length of the control room, his mind swirling with dizzying hypotheses about Dyson spheres, colossal orbital megastructures, and alien civilizations. When the phone finally shattered the silence, he snatched the receiver with trembling hands, his breath catching in his throat.
I've run the telemetry through 3 independent analytical engines utilizing entirely different algorithms to rule out software biases. Elena's voice crackled through the speaker. The prime sequence is robust, Elias. It's practically screaming at us from the noise, and there's absolutely no natural explanation for it. For a woman renowned for her icy, unflappable demeanor, the subtle tremor of awe in her voice was incredibly telling. They immediately established a secure 2-way video link, their faces illuminated by the eerie pale glow of their respective computer monitors. Together, they began the arduous process of drafting the most important scientific paper in the history of human civilization. Every word, every equation, and every statistical inference was subjected to the most brutal, uncompromising scrutiny to ensure absolute bulletproof accuracy. They debated fiercely over the intrinsic nature of the transiting object, analyzing the precise geometry of the light blockage to infer its physical shape. It wasn't a solid mass, but an intricate, sprawling lattice of opaque material, likely thousands of miles in diameter. The structure was inexplicably vast, yet delicate enough to allow fractional slivers of starlight to pierce through its geometric gaps. If this is an artificial megastructure, the energy requirements to build and maintain it are practically incomprehensible to our current understanding of physics, Elena noted grimly. We are looking at a civilization that has completely harnessed the power of its host star, a true Type II civilization on the Kardashev scale. Elias nodded slowly, profoundly humbled by the realization that humanity was merely a technological infant crawling in the cosmic dirt. By dawn, the sky outside the observatory had bruised from black to a deep melancholic purple, mirroring the exhaustion settling deep into Elias's bones. The manuscript was finally complete, a dense 80-page document titled simply Anomalous Periodic Transits in Cygnus, Evidence for Non-Natural Stellar Obscuration. They had deliberately chosen a conservative, understated title, knowing that the explosive content within would speak volumes on its own. Before pressing the key to submit the paper to the world's most prestigious astrophysical journal, Elias hesitated, his finger hovering over the mouse. He understood that once this information was disseminated, the trajectory of human history would be irreversibly and fundamentally altered forever. There would be widespread panic, philosophical upheaval, and a paradigm shift that would shake the very foundations of organized religion and societal structure.
"We are essentially opening Pandora's box, Elena," Elias whispered into the microphone, his voice barely audible over the hum of the cooling fans. "Are we entirely certain that humanity is intellectually and emotionally prepared to discover that we are not the apex of the universe?" Elena looked back at him from the screen, her expression a complex mixture of fear, excitement, and unwavering scientific resolve. "Humanity is rarely prepared for its own evolution, Elias, but ignorance is a far more dangerous poison than the terrifying truth," she replied softly. With a decisive nod, Elias depressed the mouse button, sending the encrypted data packet hurtling across the global internet. The deed was done. The undeniable proof of extraterrestrial intelligence was now accelerating toward the inboxes of the world's leading scientific minds.
Within 48 hours, the academic world erupted into an unprecedented frenzy of fierce debate, relentless verification, and intense media speculation. Observatories across the globe frantically repositioned their telescopes, desperate to independently confirm the miraculous prime number sequence emanating from the Cygnus constellation. Despite the immense skepticism and rigorous peer review, the data held firm, stubbornly refusing to be dismissed as an error or a hoax. The initial skepticism was utterly vicious, with prominent physicists publishing scathing rebuttals that accused Thorne and Rostova of gross methodological negligence. They argued vehemently that the prime numbers could be an obscure, undocumented artifact of binary star interactions or complex gravitational lensing. However, as more independent observatories published their findings, confirming the exact same artificial light curve, the loud voices of dissent gradually faded into stunned silence. Even the most hardened, cynical astronomers were eventually forced to concede that the Cygnus anomaly defied all known natural astrophysical processes. The object, dubbed the Cygnus lattice by the press, became the sole consuming focus of the entire astronomical community. Every available instrument, from orbital X-ray telescopes to massive terrestrial radio arrays, was aimed at that single tiny patch of the sky. They searched desperately for accompanying radio transmissions, laser pulses, or any other signs of directed, intentional communication. Frustratingly, the spectrum remained entirely silent, devoid of any conventional signals that would indicate an active, communicative presence. It was as if the builders had constructed their magnificent star-spanning monument and then simply vanished into the infinite depths of time.
This profound silence birthed entirely new fields of xenology, attempting to decipher the psychology of a species that builds megastructures but remains utterly mute. Philosophers debated whether the structure was an abandoned ruin of a dead empire or an active, fully functioning machine indifferent to our existence. The ambiguity only fueled the public's insatiable fascination, turning the Cygnus lattice into a ubiquitous cultural phenomenon that permeated art, literature, and politics. Elias found himself constantly debating theologians and sociologists on international television, defending the purely empirical nature of his staggering discovery. He emphasized relentlessly that science could only describe the mechanics of the lattice, not the existential motivations of its mysterious creators. Despite his rigorous objectivity, he privately harbored his own romanticized theories about the ancient beings who had so effortlessly harnessed a star. The subsequent weeks were a chaotic blur of press conferences, high-level government briefings, and intense, exhausting interviews with international news outlets. Elias, once a reclusive academic, found himself thrust unceremoniously into the blinding spotlight of global scrutiny, hailed as the messenger of a new era. Yet, amidst the cacophony of human reaction, he frequently found himself longing for the quiet, solitary nights atop the mountain. Society's reaction was intensely polarized, oscillating wildly between euphoric utopian optimism and deep-seated existential dread. Some viewed the discovery as a beacon of hope, proof that civilizations could survive their technological adolescence and achieve staggering cosmic mastery. Others, however, saw only an intimidating, omnipotent threat, a silent giant lurking in the dark forest of the universe.
Funding for space exploration and advanced propulsion systems skyrocketed overnight as nations briefly set aside their petty squabbles in the face of a greater cosmic context. A new, unprecedented spirit of global collaboration emerged, driven by the shared, desperate desire to eventually reach out and communicate with the architects. Humanity had finally stopped looking down at its own feet and started gazing up at the stars with a unified, purposeful intensity. A year after the initial discovery, Elias returned to the Cerro Pachon Observatory, seeking refuge from the relentless chaos of his newfound fame. The air up there was still thin, crisp, and profoundly silent, offering a temporary reprieve from the deafening noise of the world below. He settled back into his worn leather chair, surrounded by the familiar, comforting hum of the servers and the pale glow of the monitors. He directed the telescope back toward Cygnus, watching the raw telemetry scroll across his screen with a familiar, comforting rhythm. The star continued to flicker its prime number sequence into the void, a patient, eternal lighthouse waiting for someone to answer its call. Elias knew that he would not live long enough to see humanity build a ship capable of crossing that unfathomable interstellar distance. Nevertheless, he felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that he had played a crucial role in waking his species from its cosmic slumber. He had struck the match that illuminated the vast, intimidating darkness, revealing the beautiful, terrifying truth of their place in the universe. Smiling softly to himself, he leaned forward, typed a new string of commands into the terminal, and continued to listen to the stars.
And that concludes the astronomer's anomaly. It leaves us with a profound question. If the stars ever called out to us, would humanity be ready to answer? Thank you for listening here at Easy Story Studio. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, please leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more captivating stories. Until next time, keep looking up.